If you're a professional athlete, hobbyist, or anybody who's trying to get better at a skill, you have to push yourself past your comfort zone. But how much is too much? Are you overtraining? Well, let's talk about that in today's video. My name is Dr. Shines Farr. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, a board-certified orthopedic clinical specialist, and the owner of Unity Physical Therapy. I'm also faculty at my graduate program, and I'm a professional stuntman, breakdancer, and a competitive martial artist. Throughout my journey as a professional athlete and performer, I've had to push my body past its limits. I've definitely overtrained and wish I knew a little bit more about that. So today let's talk about what is overtraining, why it matters, how can we monitor it, and what are some ways we can prevent it. If the goal of our performance training is to get better at a skill, improve our body in terms of function and aesthetics, then we need to push past our limits. However, overtraining is essentially going to get in the way of that, because not only are you wasting lots of time and energy to get towards your goals, you might actually be making it harder. If you're not adequately recovering between your sessions, your body is breaking down too much, your nervous system's not recovering, and we're not letting our body make the adaptations it needs to get better. If you do this, it's harder to gain muscle, it's harder to get better at skills, and honestly, the quality of your life will diminish. Because not only will we not be getting better, but your central nervous system fatigue is going to affect your work, your relationships, your decision making, and everything outside of the gym or performance center. A study has shown that the effects of overtraining look similar to that of depression. So if the whole point of training is to improve at a skill or a life, then overtraining is 100% counterproductive. It's like a bell curve. There's a sweet zone of training and recovery. Where is that sweet zone is where it gets complicated, because for growth to happen, we have to push past our limits. If we push too far, we're going to start hitting a point of diminishing returns. It's hard to know where that sweet zone is. However, there are now a few ways to measure overtraining, and let's talk about the different ways, its advantages and its disadvantages. So there's two ways we can measure this. One is a subjective measurement that's kind of based on your personal rating, and there's an objective measurement, which means we're getting actual data, numbers to sort of quantify this. The subjective signs are feeling tired, moody, not finding enjoyment in the things you used to find, poor sleep, hard to relax. Remember, there's a study that says it sounds very similar to depression. And some of your training signs are you're going to be plateauing, you're not going to be recovering as quickly as you normally do between your sessions, your muscles are going to feel heavy, you're going to have some unusual muscle soreness, your reflexes and reaction time is going to be off. And so you can see that this is pretty important, not just for training, but the quality of our life. The objective signs is where we've made some recent advancements. One really good way is getting lab values. That's where they draw your blood, they look at creatine kinase and different things that are basically catabolic metabolites from training. Your body trains, builds up these biomarkers, and then you take a blood sample, you analyze those biomarkers and see, hey, are those biomarkers too high, meaning you're overtraining. However, this is largely used for research, and for the athletes, this isn't practical. Getting your blonde drawn every day, sending it to a lab, having the lab analyze it is just not feasible for time, financial reasons, and just all the effort. This is really what we just do in science so that we can understand it and build off of that. However, there's one prevailing theory that your grip strength is a good measurement of overtraining. Now, I did a literature search and I couldn't find a specific article that linked grip strength to overtraining. One of the problems with it is that grip is very dependent on different skills we do. For instance, as a BJJ practitioner, you need your grip a lot in the gi and a no-gi to hold your opponent. If you're a rock climber, this is also really big. However, if you're a runner or swimmer, for instance, your grip might not be that affected because you're not holding on to something for dear life. Instead, you're trying to propel yourself with your legs and arms. The idea is that your grip, though, will get fatigued because it's a sign of the central nervous system. So you can get a baseline of your grip using a handheld dynamometer, or some people even use a kitchen or bathroom scale. Track your baseline, and then if one day it's just much less than normal, that's a sign that you're overtraining. Now, there's no data on how much of a difference between day to day is significant. However, it could be a useful tool. You just have to note that, for instance, if your task is more grip dependent, this might not work well for you because you might not be overtrained your whole body, but I might have been playing jiu-jitsu and been holding on to someone for dear life and my grips are tired the next day, but my body as a whole is ready for training. Now, I use the handheld dynamometer a lot in the clinic when I'm checking for grip strength for overall performance, and also if there's a nerve impingement in the neck. So the grip strength measurement is a useful tool. However, I'm not 100% sure this is the best means for analyzing overtraining. The good news is we can measure two things pretty easily. One, our resting heart rate, and two, our heart rate variability. Resting heart rate is basically how many beats per minute your heart is doing. So you see it often where people check their pulse on their neck or their wrist. You count how many there are in 15 seconds and then multiply it by 4 to add up to a minute. When you wake up in the morning, if your resting heart rate is slightly more elevated than usual, this might be a sign that you're overtraining because your nervous system and your body is still kicking into high gear and hasn't really gotten back into the rest process. Heart rate variability is the variability, meaning difference, in the space between those beats. A high heart rate variability is actually a sign of good health and your body's ready to recover. A low heart rate variability means that our body needs some rest or it's not in good shape. Some people propose that if your morning heart rate is elevated more than 5 beats per minute than the usual baseline, this might be a sign that you're overtraining. Good news about this tool is it's free. All you need to do is count and multiply. The bad news is, again, I haven't seen a lot of studies that show the validity of this. Heart rate variability is obviously harder to measure with just our fingers, but that's where things like the Whoop Band, the Oura Ring, and I believe even the Apple Watch. I'm not sponsored by any of these products, although I do use the Whoop Band myself to check my overtraining with jiu-jitsu and surfing and stunts and all that. The heart rate variability requires a little bit of tech. However, there is some research that shows that this is actually an accurate and valid measure for overtraining. Some people propose even combining your resting heart rate and your heart rate variability as a means of analyzing your overtraining and what your body needs. Now, at the end of the day, if you're a professional athlete or someone who's just trying to improve at a skill, I think picking the tool that's best for you is going to help. To be honest, lab values aren't really practical for a lot of people. The grip strength thing is really dependent on what sport you do. The morning heart rate is good, but we're not 100% sure about it. And the heart rate variability seems to be the best tool. However, it does require that you wear a band all the time. You have to spend money on the band, and if there is a subscription service as well. And so that can have its downsides too. You can also just use the subjective measures and see like, hey, am I feeling tired? Am I feeling anxious? Not in a good mood more than usual? And my muscles just feel weak. That might be good enough for you as well. I don't necessarily think there's one best tool. Although the heart rate variability monitor seems to show the most promise, the question is, does it fit with your lifestyle? So we know that overtraining matters. How can we measure it? Let's talk about maybe some ways to reduce it or even recover from it. Overtraining is pretty simple. We're doing more than our body can keep up with yet, meaning we're spending too much and not gaining enough back. It's the equivalent of you're spending more money than your income is, and so your bank account is slowly leaking and leaking and leaking. That's going to cause some problems. If we want to recover from overtraining, in the first place, we just need to make sure that we kind of reduce the load in the meantime to let our body adequate, and then it'll slowly get ready for that new and increased strain. We also need to provide the right environment for recovery. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating the right foods? Are we happy? Are we overworking our brain? Because the central nervous system, which deals with your brain and solving problems and tasks and studying for a test, is the same nervous system we're using for our motor skills. So if we're stressed, trying to solve some problems, dealing with a big test coming up, something at work, our brain might be overtaxed, and we might have to factor this into how much training we're doing. So obviously things like meditation, getting good sleep, engaging in behaviors that make us happy, reducing our training load, eating right, these are all ways we can help recover from the overtraining, and they're also ways to help prevent it to begin with. You have to think about it like you're depositing some into your bank account so that when you're trained, you can take some out. The good news about training is when you're taking it out, it's like making an investment. So over time, that investment will yield returns, and you can do a little bit more each session without taking as much money. If we can invest more than we afford at the beginning, that might cause some problems. I hope this video helped you guys appreciate overtraining, why it's important, how to monitor it, and some ways to deal with it. The science on this is pretty new, and as our tools get more sophisticated, I'm sure a lot of this data is going to improve or change. So stay tuned for more videos on health and wellness and injury recovery. Follow us on Instagram at UnityPTLA. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and go to unityphysicaltherapy.com for more information. Thank you guys, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.